Talk about a biomass, we're talking about anything that's a biological mass. Right. So the advantage of using water plants is there's a lot of insects, water insects, that complete their cycles, and they're the dragonfly nymphs. They shed their skins about every 2 weeks. Every time they shed their skin, it's calcium carbonate. So they have all their skins left over in them. There's a lot of decomposed material all inside that seaweed that it's sucked up with it. So when we put it on the pile, it's got moisture, it's got little micronutrients, it's got insect shells in it. So we're composting with that as our biomass, but it's serving a double purpose. It's a filter for our fish tanks. It's scrubbing the water and cleaning it for them. At the same time, it's making a biomass for us to use. So all depending on how much circulation we have and how much fish, we should be able to pull half those ponds out at least once a week. Right. Between the 3 ponds, that should be 50 or 75 pounds of water hyacinths every week or two, which will quickly add up along with the coffee grounds and the shredded newspaper and whatever compost you guys bring. Right, it's basically coffee grounds, newspaper, water hyacinths, sugarcane, banana leaves, grass, and different things that we have here with a little bit of food scrap compost. First we're putting it in compost piles and we're letting it heat up, which is called thermophilic composting. And then we're going to, as it cools off, our worms that are already introduced will move into each pile systematically as it's cooled, and then they'll eat it into a different kind of compost, actually into worm castings, which they'll add so much stuff of their own to it, then it's really superior. Multiple forms of fertilizer. Because we're actually growing dirt. So we're using these water plants to grow the dirt with by running the water to them and using them as a filter. Worm casts contain 5 times more nitrogen, 7 times more phosphorus, 11 times more potassium than ordinary soil. The main minerals needed for plant growth. But the large numbers of beneficial soil and microorganisms in the worm casts have at least as much to do with it. The casts are also rich in humic acid, which conditions the soil and has a perfect pH balance. In a lot of ways, it's actually a lot easier to do it in colder climates, because if you're in a frost area, you can put heaters in your tanks and you can grow plants in frost because they're circulating warm water inside their systems. So you can grow trout, you can grow several different types of fish that you can't grow here, that we have a lot warmer water. Compost piles in the wintertime will actually heat up and stay hot inside of them, even with snow on them. So your worms will kind of just go dormant in the piles. You don't have as much weeds, everything dies at the end of the year, so you can find tons of biomass. I've not really done a whole lot of growing in northern climates. I grew up in Hawaii, so I don't have a lot of hands-on experience with that, but for sure I've seen it work in other people's farms, and the theories are the same, but just using different components of what you're going to compost. Your piles aren't going to go as fast, we're hotter. Right, I set up a system for someone in San Diego that's doing really good, and they're growing tilapia and they're growing trout. Wow. Yeah, okay. So they definitely work there. I haven't got a lot of hands-on information back from him because I've been really busy, but the last time I checked, everything was doing really good. Focus around the compost pile for a little bit. And so what I got in that wheelbarrow is I got all the paper products that were here, cardboard and newspaper and different things. We have piles of coffee that Josie's been bringing, and we have coffee that's been composted with grass already. And so I want to just build on that compost pile right now and have you guys all right there watching it with a good hands-on. Okay, you guys feel this, how hot that is. That's been in there for about, just the end of it. That's been in there for about half an hour. That's holy balls. It's still got some heat on there. It'll lose it pretty quick. You recommend? Basic. Compost chemistry. Of the many elements required for microbial decomposition, carbon and nitrogen are the most important. Carbon provides both an energy source and the basic building block, making up about 50% of the mass of microbial cells. Nitrogen is a crucial component of the proteins, nucleic acids, and amino acids, enzymes, and coenzymes necessary for cell growth and function. To provide optimum amounts of these two crucial elements, and when they're talking about nitrogen being like that we need it in our body for our cells, and like nitrogen being what is the universe is made out of, mostly what, carbon and nitrogen, pretty much. I mean, and then everything else in the entire universe is made up of about 3% or something like that. Well, every other element in the universe is constantly recycled again and again and again. So nitrogen is found in the air, it's found in water, it's found in soil and in plants. All the green growth you see in plants is basically nitrogen. So when something's green and you put it down in a pile, that's nitrogen is going to do, it's going to transfer into whatever is around it, the carbon, and it's going to heat it up, and it's going to basically eat the carbon up. Which is kind of like a chemical reaction. So I'm just trying to put that in like kind of layman's terms. To provide optimal amounts of these two crucial elements, you can use the carbon to nitrogen ratio for each of your compost ingredients. Ideal C to N ratio for composting is generally considered to be around 30 to 1. 30 parts carbon for each part of nitrogen by weight. Why 30 to 1? At lower ratios, nitrogen will be supplied in excess and will be lost as ammonia gas. You get it? Lower ratios, nitrogen will be supplied in excess and will be lost as ammonia gas. So what's going on is it gets so hot in there that it starts to overrule the carbon that's in there. It's going to almost turn into a slurry, and then a lot of your nitrogen is just going to disappear right back into the air, and you're actually going to lose it out of the pile. Or it's going to lock up and not be available.
So Eddie, is that heat produced then just from those two elements, basically?
Yep.
That's it?
Yeah, it's
just
a chemical.
Mix them together and it gets hot?
That's it.
Okay.
And it's what they're talking about, enzymes and all the microbial little deals, they play a major part in somehow processing that. And I'm not a scientist, I'm trying to keep it as much on as layman's term as I can. So we do have, Becky's not here, she's a biologist. Maybe in the future we can even get some of that a little more scientific if we need it.
So you don't want to get too hot then?
Well, it can get too hot in the beginning, it's fine. What goes on is once it reaches, I think, about above 160 degrees, and I think it'll say it right in here, it'll start to kill the microbes.
Yeah, so what do you do to keep it from going too hot?
You add water.
In general, materials that are green and moist tend to be high in nitrogen, and those that are brown and dry are high in carbon.
So let me interrupt for that for just a second here. Okay, that's an important comment there, because a few people have said to me, look, I want to put nitrogen in my garden, so I'm cutting grass, but I'm letting it dry out in the sun first. And I'm telling them, no, you don't want to let it to dry out in the sun, because as soon as you let it dry out in the sun, it becomes more carbon than nitrogen. The green in it and the moisture is what holds the nitrogen there. So that nitrogen will literally just dissipate into the air. So that's kind of what they're talking about, brown and dry being more of a carbon substance. And the more green and wet and moist it is, the more nitrogen it's going to have to.
So you want to have a balanced green and brown mix in your pile.
Absolutely. You want it green and brown mixed. You want the nitrogen to actually heat up, break it down with the moisture, and then all the little microbes actually travel by a thin film that's created. And so they get to it and start working it down and eating it and basically swim through it back and forth.
Wow.
So the dry stuff keeps the balance, and the nitrogen heats it up. And you can, if your pile is getting too hot, you got too much nitrogen, you can either wet it down or you can throw more carbon to it to change the ratio.
More green.
More carbon-based, more brown. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, we'll use green and brown.
Okay.
Brown,
So wet it down or add more brown.
Yeah, wet it down or add more brown. Both of those will do it.
Hey, we're going to town, man.
I'm going to write that down.
You mentioned before a 30 to 1 ratio being ideal. Can we eyeball that in any way by using green materials and brown materials?
Oh yeah, of course you can.
You know, I've got 30 wheelbarrows of brown.
That's all we're doing right here.
Oh,
and we're going to look at the ratio and what we're putting in this pile as we build it right now. It'll kind of give you an idea to what we're doing. And most of it, what I like to do with people is just get hands-on. Because, I mean, rarely is anybody weighing 5 pounds of nitrogen and 35 pounds of carbon. It's kind of a feel you're going to get for it, just like Mother Nature does.
Nitrogen materials include grass clippings, plant cuttings, and fruit and veg scraps. Brown or woody materials, such as autumn leaves, wood chips, sawdust, and shredded paper are high in carbon. You can calculate, oh hey, I should have read this instead of asking you. You can calculate the carbon-nitrogen ratio of your compost mixture, or you can estimate optimal conditions simply by using a combination of materials that are high in carbon and others that are high in nitrogen.
Okay, this is what, okay, autumn leaves are, I'm not sure how they have it on here.
Between 30 and 80% to 1.
Right, exactly. And depending on how much moisture is in them and how green those autumn leaves are. That's why it's going to change like that. Straw is 40 to 100 to 1, depending on how fresh it is, how much moisture is in it. A lot of times, wood chips or sawdust, 100 or 500 to 1, meaning they're really high carbon. Bark, 100 to 130 to 1. Mixed paper, 150 to 200 to 1. Paper or corrugated cardboard, 560 to 1. So that's why we can take a giant pile of cardboard and newspaper and add just a few bags of coffee grounds to it and turn that into dirt.
Wow.
You know, because we'll go, the material's high in nitrogen. Vegetable scraps, coffee grounds are 20 to 1. grass clippings are 15 to 25 to 1, and manure is 15 to 25 to 1.